business exists to make a profit, and the stakeholders they have obviously are the shareholders, the employees, their customers, and society at large. So I think it's quite difficult to say exactly where business should and should not be spending, and I think Google and the internet are probably good places for them to spend. But what concerns me is that government is not being a good citizen. Sorry, business is not being a good citizen in South Africa, and by that I mean if you look at how much money business gives to fund political campaigns. I don't know the exact number, but I have seen a figure quoted of about R1 billion in political donations. Now, they are doing that ostensibly to say that we want to create a free and fair environment and encourage people to vote and encourage people to have access to politicians. Now whether funding politicians is good or bad, obviously, that's not the debate. But what do they give proportionately to the media? They give next to nothing. And if we look at the important role the media plays in South Africa, it's huge. I mean, without the Daily Maverick and others, who knows where as a country we would be today? Who knows where our credit rating, our currency, our economy, our confidence, it's not great as it is, but it's highly likely that it would be a lot worse if we didn't have the voice of Daily Maverick and others that are defending the truth. So whether business likes it or not, they can't thrive in an underperforming economy. So even if business says, listen, I only have a vested interest to myself and my shareholders, well, you still need a thriving economy. I mean, big business is not going to do well with low economic growth. They need that. And I think what business, where I'm very disappointed with big business, is the lack of support for the independent media, and they want to be politically correct, it seems to me, all the time, and they're spending an enormous amount of money in the wrong areas. They could certainly halve their political donations and spend more on media.
So spend 500 million of that 1 billion, give it to independent media.
At least. I mean, as I said, I can't judge one over the other, but if you were to ask me, what is better for South Africa, more politicians or more independent media? The truth. And the problem we have, it's not only South Africa, it's a global problem, is that there's a concentration of power. There's a concentration of economic power and vested interests are driving agendas. And that's why we need the truth to come out, is because these vested interests, and we see with Facebook and others, they can almost control the truth and invent the truth. So the more vested interests supporting each other, the less free society we're going to have and the less access to the truth. And we can't make decisions unless we have the truth. We can't make good decisions for ourselves. We can be guided to bad decisions that are in the best interest of others, but not ourselves.
Yeah, but big business is not helping the same cause. Because, right now, yesterday I put up at the Cullinan. I wanted to watch Afro Worldview. They didn't have it. Why is it that they didn't have Afro Worldview at the Cullinan? So big business decides for guests what channel guests should watch. Why is that so? Is it true, therefore, that big business is also having a symbiotic relationship with a particular mainstream media narrative? So big business is not helping in ensuring that the truth comes out. We here as Afro Worldview, Channel 405, we want everybody to hear the other side of the story, what's happening in the Afro spaces and what's happening in the rural areas, what's happening in black communities. But business people sitting here in their hotels, they make decisions for guests. They switch off Channel 405, and yet Channel 405 is available virtually in all the packages of DSTV.
Okay, so let me come back to this. So Tsogo Sun, which owns the Cullinan, is a black-owned group. I think they're making a choice on popularity. I've looked at the numbers and...
Should guests be the ones that decide? Shouldn't the guest... Why can't I decide as a guest? Why is it that the manager at Tsogo Sun decides for me?
How many people watch Afro?
Doesn't cost any much more to have it than to have it, because...
What are its viewership numbers?
We've got a decent... We're better than CNN, we're better than Sky TV, we're better than BBC in the country. In the country.
Do you have a higher viewership than those?
Than those, yes, in the country, yes.
Okay. Did you go go downstairs and ask the Cullinan?
I beg your pardon?
Did you go and ask the
I
Cullinan?
asked them, but there was no manager there. They said they asked the manager, and the manager wasn't there.
Thank you. We talk about the future of public development because that big decision is coming up soon. So, Anne Crotty, you've covered so many stories, but the one I want to speak about this morning is Sagarmatha, the attempt by Ipal Survey and his group to list what they said was going to be a unicorn, valued at, I think, 50 billion, something pitch document suggested. Tell us a little about that story and what it says to you about the capture of media, about the media landscape, etc.
Well, I think, the only reason actually that Sagarmatha didn't get the listing it wanted was because it had failed to adhere to some of the requirements of the Companies Act. And that was picked up by somebody in the Companies and Intellectual Property Office. It's quite disturbing. I mean, without becoming very dictatorial about the terms of listings, but it is a bit disturbing that a company that hadn't made a profit for a few years, that had, as I recall, massive negative equity and on the balance sheet, would have been able to get a listing. And this was a few months after another one of the Sekujalo related companies was listed, AO. Now, AO was listed at 43 rands thanks to the backing of the PIC, and it's quite quickly dropped to 25 rands and hasn't kind of gone anywhere from there. I mean, it's a contrived, I think it's a contrived market in the trade, and it would have been the same with Sagarmatha. The issue, I mean, it's quite interesting, you know, what Stephen was saying about business backing media. In 2008-9, I tried to organize an employee-backed takeover of the Independent. And we actually did, we were listened to quite enthusiastically. And the only thing that blocked it was business wanted us to have a major black empowerment partner with us. They weren't satisfied that, you know, I think we had 600 signatures from employees, the majority of whom were black, and that wasn't enough. And I think that's why it failed. And it's sort of that lack of support. I think the business people we were speaking to were keen, but they were nervous because it's a media asset. And then could I just raise one issue on the advertising point that
Please.
But I think it is really important for business to back, for government to back black business. I mean, it's needed for transformation.
This is when the clap hands.
No, wait till the next sentence, sorry. But you know, as far as I can make out, it's reasonable for them to put ads in the Sunday Times and the City Press because both those publications have the readership to justify the ads. Before ANN7 and New Age, they didn't have the readership. And I don't think it ever came up to numbers that would have justified that kind of advertising. So government is then required to justify why they're backing it.
Yeah,
it's not an open-ended.
Yeah, okay, I can't talk about ANN7 and New Age. Those are old brands. I'm talking now about Afro Worldview. You see, this is the problem when you are black in this country. I mean, you look right now at Ferrier. Look at just even the setting here. I'm the only one sitting on a chair without a cushion. Can you see this?
You chose that chair.
No, I don't think you chose that chair.
I'm the only one. Everyone has a cushion, just me. This is what happens.
It's actually much more comfortable.
This is what happens. No, you see, what the black people, general in the country, started after white people in terms of real big business and all of that. We're still following. So if you have a situation like you have, I think she's talking to this thing called the ABC, Audit Bureau of Circulation, where they audit your figures, etc., etc. So those are some of the barriers of entry into this industry. So what happens is that the big players set the rules. They agree that in order for a rate card to be priced so much, you must have so much circulation. which is all well and good when you've been in business for as long as Sunday Times have been in business. But new players that are measured with the same scale as veterans in the space is just an inherently unfair system. So it cannot be that we have government that is going to treat, is going to dispense equal treatment on unequal people. It is incorrect. It would have been incorrect for government to use the same thing, and yet you're dealing with people that are not the same. Others are well-resourced. They've been here for decades. There's a new baby that is coming. You can't use the same measure. There has to be a transformation element. There has to be an element that says these ones are still starting, and therefore they must be assisted. So you can't be using the same
I would
scale.
argue that the New Age got a lot of startup support. What did it ultimately sell? We have to be able to measure these things. It never submitted itself to audits and then it closed down. I'd argue because it never ever built up a readership and audience or a market of magnitude. Do you want to change chairs, maybe?
No.
No.
No. I'll tell you why it closed. It closed because of reputation issues and whatever it is. That's the only reason it has closed. Because, this is a funny thing. You go to government to say you're trying to get an ad and so on. You know what they say? They say to you, they are afraid of answering a parliamentary question to dispense with New Age. So people decide, purely because of that, it's just too much to deal with. That's why it goes down, because of what has been built up. You see, mainstream media is very powerful. Even coming here, I was looking at even the poster of coming here. Everyone in the poster for this gathering, you must check it out. You must check the posters of people that are speaking here. They are all, they pick the nicest of the pictures of everyone, smiling and everything. But when it came to my picture, they found the angriest. And the reason for that, this is all deliberate. The reason for that is to position or characterize me as this angry black. And so when you say angry black, what that conjures in their mind is that now I'm emotional, I'm irrational, I don't think things through and all of that. Then you get put into a corner and then you can easily get discarded. This is what happened in the space. So if you want to kill anything in this country, give it a Gupta name. Even fresh milk. You put fresh milk here and you say Gupta, it turns sour. Meaning. So this is what happens. You have...
Can I just, sorry to
Please, Anne. So the Guptas are said to have cost us, the Gupta Zuma network, 100 billion rand, and I think that's a fairly well-audited figure. So I think you're being slightly disingenuous, but can I just move on a little bit here? So Anne, say you had been allowed, or your group, your consortium had been allowed to take over independent media. Where do you think it would be right now? Because I think if you look at the numbers, independent media is in some trouble. It's got a massive loan that's due with the PIC quite soon. Do you think its future might have been different if funders had understood that black employees are a very important constituency, a very important BEE partner?
I think it would, I think it's safe to say it would be in a stronger position than it is now. And I think we would have broken it up, different regions in the country, to create voices, Zele is you're right, we need more voices. And we were speaking to, one of the business people we were speaking to was a specialist in distribution, in logistics, and I think that's a very important part of journalism. It's not just the writing and the production, it's the distribution. It's getting it out, it's trying to work out what is the most effective way of getting in touch with readers, customers, whatever. I'd like to think it would have been a more vibrant operation, although Branko says I'm very lucky not to have.
Very what?
Lucky that Iqbal Survey arrived and saved me from the Independent. But I do think it's important what Stephen says, we need some kind of funding. I mean, that was the big issue. How do you fund the media? It doesn't make huge amounts of money. And it's almost, you kind of think, I mean, look at some of the media owners, and I'd include Tony O'Reilly in this, that anybody, and the Irish guy who took over from him, Dennis O'Brien, you're almost inclined to think that anybody, any big business person who wants to have media, control a media company, should not be allowed to, by definition, because it then becomes an ego project and also promotion of their own business interests.
So, Phil, can I just, I think that the vast majority of South Africans want South Africa to succeed. That's why we're here. Because I came back from London, whatever, it's 14 years ago, because I want to be part of the solution, not part of the problem, and I love South Africa. So we're here. Now, in order for South Africa to succeed, the population's got to succeed. And we know that demographically, heavily skewed, 85–90% plus is non-white. So we can't live in South Africa and not want blacks to succeed in every facet of our lives. I mean, that would just be stupid. If you look at what government has done in terms of government policy, in terms of employment equity, ownership, etc., there's an enormous amount of policy that favours black business. Unquestionably, objectively speaking. So it's there. I came back to South Africa to start a business where I wanted to compete with the big financial institutions, and I knew that I was going to get zero support from government because I'm a white person, so I have no legitimacy there. I was not going to get any support from financial advisors or brokers who actually promote most of these products. People don't know that they pay the broker to sell them the product. It's like going to pick and pay and paying somebody to walk around with you to put their goods in your basket. And so it's tough. It's tough starting a business. It's also been tough for black-owned asset managers. It's not easy. It's not easy for anyone to start a business, but as you say, you've got to be good enough. You can get money. So, if you look at South Africa, this is a huge economy. Government spends 1.5 trillion rand per year. There's a lot of money going around, and it has to be common cause that we want black business to succeed. I mean, I can't think of any rational person that would want black business to fail. It's what are you doing here? Okay. So the problem is that is business being allocated on a fair and transparent basis? That's the question over here. And if you look, for example, at the PRC, you say the PRC has funded some of these companies. Who is the PRC? I'll tell you, it's me. Why am I the PRC? Because I'm the taxpayer. Okay, the PRC manages the Government Employee Pension Fund, which is a defined benefit, which means we underwrite it. Okay, so the government promises you a pension, and the taxpayer underwrites it. So when we hear that, and we don't know if it's true or not, or how much they're funding and what the debt is, but it's a lack of transparency. So how much of my tax am I going to be prepared to pay into a lack of transparency? And the same can be said for business. When business did a lot of these BE deals, there's no transparency behind these deals. How did certain individuals become billionaires overnight? Where's the transparency? So as Anne's saying, couldn't get access to what sounds like could have been a very good deal, uplifted lots of people for black participation in the economy, whatever. And that's what we're struggling with, is that there are these big vested interests that are not transparent, and when you ask them questions, they become more opaque. And if we knew the truth, we could make decisions for ourselves. Is it a good business to fund? What are the commercial terms of what's happening?
It is more transparent now, and I think there's a work of financial journalism to be done in unpacking that. But
I don't think it's more transparent. Sorry, with respect, I can't see it. I don't know. I don't see transparency in these kind of transactions.
I think let's set a few things straight. Firstly, I think the point of departure, when you say non-white, let it be clear to everyone in this country that that is very offensive. I am not a non-white. You can't, when you refer to me, make a reference to you that it almost means that it's white and everything else is non-white. I'm not I'm black, I'm African. It's a clear definition. So you can't define me using you as a point of reference. And you are the point of reference, you are white, and therefore this is the peg on the ground, and everything else is not this. Let everybody know that
I think that's semantic, with respect.
No, it's okay.
I mean, I
Let
don't
me just
use
proceed. The next point.
semantic.
So the semantic is very fundamental. It's very fundamental. I did not fail to be white. I am African. I'm not white. I didn't fail to be white. That's the first thing. The second thing, I think let's dispel this myth that this government is not doing business with white people. It's a lot of nonsense, absolutely nonsense. Here is a few things. Firstly, in this country, when you say black company, what do we mean? When you say black company, we mean 51% black owned. That is a black company. That means 49% is white. So this notion that if you're white, there's no future for you is absolute nonsense. Number one. Number two, if you look at even the policies of this country, the policies of government actually pro-established business, which is a proxy for white. What does that mean? It means if you look at the procurement policy, for instance, as we speak here and now, that policy says when you allocate points, 90% of the points must go to price, lowest price. Which black business in this country can compete toe-to-toe with an established white business? Richard Maponya, a retailer, has got no chance in hell to compete with Raymond Ackerman because Raymond Ackerman has got scale. But now when you go into government policy which says we're going to allocate 90% of the points on the lowest price, it's a euphemism for saying we'll give it to established white business. So this notion that if you are white in this country, you've got no chance, this is not true. When you say employment equity, this thing about no future for white in this country is simply not true. Because employment equity is about equitable distribution of human resources, as it were. So if you and then the problem here is when people are spoiled, when people are used to having it all by themselves, sharing then becomes like a discrimination. When in fact the truth of the matter is that when you look at employment equity, what it seeks to do is to ensure that in this country we have 10% about white people in this country. So therefore all positions should somewhat reflect that. But when I used to be 100% everything, when you say 10%, you feel you are being discriminated. When in fact we're saying you must be there in proportion to a demographic profile. Nothing could be fairer than that.
I'm not sure you got into a lot of trouble for that the last time you said people in
I know the truth is always a problem, I know.
So Anne Crotty, if I could come back to you and change tack a little bit. I think you do a brilliant job, but I wonder about the rest of our media, and I'll tell you what I'm talking about here. For example, Steinhoff. Until the fraud was committed and it became public around last December, I saw acres and acres of copy that covered it as a brilliant globalizing South African company, and acres of copy that covered Marcus Jooste as if he was the next best thing, the next big story. Is the financial media, the media in general, is it as good a watchdog over corporate malfeasance as it is over watching the public brand?
No.
No.
I don't think so. I don't think so. Yeah, but on Zanelli's point about, I mean, what you're saying, it does demonstrate that there are, when we talk about the truth, there are so many truths. And I think, I'm told that Marcus Jooste does not believe he did anything wrong.
He doesn't believe he did anything wrong.
That's what I'm told. Now, so his truth is, you know, well, I can't begin to understand how his mind works, but that is a really disturbing reality or thought. That,
Can we do a better job of covering our corporates in perhaps more muscular ways? Because what about the others, Logan Doubles, McKinsey, etc.?
Yeah, I think we need much more resources to be able to cover. We need sort of a lot more training, because there's quite a lot of skills involved in being able to interrogate issues that you've mentioned and come up. So the easier thing to do is to accept what we're told by the companies. And I don't think we're serving anybody. We're not even serving the companies by accepting their version of the truth.
I thought this conference was about the truth. Let them speak the truth. The truth is that media is conflicted. Most of these companies that the Competition Commission reports about, that do all the scariest things in terms of governance and ethics and all that, but they're big advertisers. So media must just be honest. We're here to tell the truth. We're here to correct the country.
So what
So media must say they're conflicted because they don't want to say bad things about their customers, because they are interested in the advertising revenue, period.
I can tell you about many, many occasions where advertisers have threatened to pull their advertising if a story is not killed, and I think I've seen many, many editors standing up for those stories to go ahead, even if that ad is pulled. I think that's frank. Can I come back to you, Stephen? So earlier you said a wonderful thing, that companies should fund the media a lot more as a philanthropic exercise. So say the Daily Maverick has a huge investigation on 10X. I'm sure they're not going to, but say it did, right? They find lots of skullduggery in your numbers. What would you do? I mean, how do you secure that independence? What's the Chinese wall you build between that money, the funding, and the media?
So, every company must decide on the character they want to have and whether they're going to be true to that character. So I work for a global investment bank, and every global investment bank has the same 4 values. The first they say is integrity. Well, anyone who's followed the financial system for a few years will know that that's not true. They pay hundreds of billions of dollars in fines. So that's not true. Then they say client interest first. Well, once again, that's not true. They say teamwork, and everyone's out for themselves, so that's not true. And the 4th one is they say performance. Okay, so we can all say wonderful things. The same as in financial services and investing. Everyone tells you how much they care for you. Okay. So it doesn't matter what people say. It matters what people do and whether they walk the talk and they are transparent. So I'm telling you, I say that 10X is transparent. We disclose all of our fees. That's what I tell you we do. And now you must come and kick the tires and say, well, if I look at your investment report, do I see all the information you're telling me? If I'm a client and I get a benefit investment statement, do I see all the fees you're charging? Now, if people did that, you would see that on your pension fund statement, besides 10X, no one in South Africa does that. Okay, look at your pension fund statement, you'll see a net return, you won't know what investment fees, and you'll know that the investment industry does very well. So people can do this themselves. If any journalist, Daily Maverick, did a report on 10X, they must publish what they must publish. I mean, I've always believed that the way that you conduct business... No, well, I mean, would I pull my support? Okay, the question is am I walking the talk? So if I were to pull 10X's advertising, well then you know maybe there's a problem there. So what I'm telling you is that there are no skeletons, so I wouldn't pull it. Okay. If I did pull it, then that would question, you would question the judgment. So we have created a business which is very simple, very transparent. Most investments are complex, layered, and tremendous amount of complexity. So we allow clients inside our business, they can see what we can see, and the Daily Maverick and anyone else can see that as well. I agree that there's conflicts. Life is conflict. I mean, to say that there's conflicts between advertisers, of course it is. I mean, it's everyday business. There's conflicts. It's how one manages those conflicts, and the way you do that is with transparency. If everything was transparent, you'd be able to see it. So there's a saying we used to talk about is that any business dealing we do, would you be happy to have that published on the front page of the Daily Maverick? Sure. That's the asset test.
I went
should be there anyway.
I went to McKinsey recently, and they have sandblasted all over their new office doors a range of their values, and they had managed to abuse every single one of those. It was really interesting. But so questions from the floor now. We have a few minutes before we complete. Any questions? We'd love to hear them. No, don't see any. Okay. Yes, ma'am. A mic will get to you shortly.
I don't think you've been charitable to Zwanele's analysis that the media is conflicted in many instances. So to put you to the test, give us an example of your many examples where you published an article against a company when they were threatening to withdraw funding. And don't say McKinsey. another example,
Don't
which
say
is
McKinsey.
because we all knew that was happening from the public protector reports. It wasn't editorial intelligence or advanced reporting. We only found out after the public protector told us. That's when the media started telling us that this was happening, not prior. That's why that example doesn't apply. Tell us one that is not commonly known to the room, but known to you because you're an editor.
Okay, sure. I guess the worst one was SAA when I was editing City Press, threatened to pull advertising for a story we were writing. And previously...
Private company. Tell us something that isn't in the public knowledge that you, as an editor, acted in a way where you were not observant of the conflict. It's easy for everyone to say, yes, we're independent, we don't care about their money, we'll report regardless. I'm putting you to the test because you're sitting there in a position of authority telling us that you don't do that and your publications don't pay attention to that bias. But we constantly see that the things the Competition Commission is covering aren't necessarily the things that even the Daily Maverick is covering. So you have to gain our trust by giving us an example.
So SAA doesn't count, I guess, because it's a state-owned enterprise. Another example from long ago when I edited the Mail and Guardian would be Anglo-American. I think advertisers will often try to pressure you from within the private sector and the state-owned enterprise sector, and yes, definitely government. Government has threatened to pull its advertising many, many times. I'm saying that it's a fairly constant attempt by advertisers, and it's about the mettle of the editors and the freedom those editors are given to make the publishing decisions that they do. Personally, I think it's getting a lot more difficult because things are so tough, because advertising revenues are coming down so rapidly. Anybody else?
I don't, not for a long time. I mean, I think it was Checkers a long time ago that threatened to pull advertising. But that was like very long time ago.
A long time ago.
But I mean, and I think I'm reasonably robust in engaging on corporate affairs. But my editors have always protected me from kind of any threats like that, or any informational threats like that. It might happen, I don't know. But I think the biggest reason, and I think you're right, that we're not vigorous enough with business, but it's only partly because of the potential threat of pulling ads. I think my editors will always say, well, look, if you're going to go down that path, you've got to be very sure of what you're doing. So that there's that bonus, that burden to know a lot more. And I think business is a little bit more technical. So if we're not more robust, it's because we need more skills to do it.
I actually think you need a different business model. This thing is inherently conflictual, so we're not going to solve it this way. We need different business model. If you look at the business model, for instance, that MultiChoice is using with us, I don't know with other people, where we supply content and they pay us a content fee. What that does to us as the company, it gives us freedom to do whatever I want to do. Because if I want to deal with a particular company, I'm not worried about what are the consequences. I'm just going to speak the truth about that company and all that. And by the way, we've got an editorial policy that must still pass the BCCSA code of conduct and what have you. So I'm saying that model helps media to be honest. Afro Worldview is honest because we don't have to be nice to you because there are consequences of being not nice to you. So we need to find a similar kind of model, in my view, for print, for all others, to ensure that media is free to do what it must do without consequences.
So MultiChoice pays you hosting fee?
Content fee.
Based on
we provide them
your
good
audience.
content, diversity, something that can't get anywhere. We give them.
You give them,
They pay us for that.
Sure. So let me ask, I guess coming to my final question, some of my final questions, because we're about to wrap up. On August the 20th, I think, which is next week, MultiChoice has to find the new channel, which is going to replace what used to be ANN7, what is now AfroView television network, right?
No, no.
Yes.
They're going to replace ANN7. I think we must stop there. AfroWorldView is a new brand that is bidding. So this whole conflation of things is in fact almost like a strategy to just discredit and undermine AfroWorldView and put it in the same basket as ANN7.
It was the same as the bad photograph of you, although I think it's not that terrible on the ad. So do you think that you stand a chance of getting that contract next week once MultiChoice makes the decision?
I'm glad you asked this question. In fact, I think what South Africa should be asking of MultiChoice is to have a transparent process of how they adjudicate. Because I think the truth of the matter is that the RFP is out there for everyone to see.
Yes.
I know that I'm on NDA conditions, but RFP is public.
Yes.
Everybody knows that MultiChoice...
That's a request for proposal.
A request for proposal. It's all public. MultiChoice said they wanted a 51% minimum black-owned company.
Yes.
We are 100% black-owned. So we are working on water. This is all public information. They wanted a company that is run by locals. We, were very lucky. God works in mysterious ways. Around March, Home Affairs comes and they put pressure on the Indian nationals that were there. And by April, almost half of them, by June, all of them were gone. At the time we submitted our bid, were locally run. So as we sit here and now, AfroWorldView is run by the locals. We've rebranded and all that. So
You think you stand a good chance?
You
think you stand a
You
good
must be the judge, because if you look at the RFP, all the things that they wanted in the RFP, this is not confidential information. We're ticking all the boxes. So if any rational decision, in fact, it would be, the question is, if not us, why? Why not us? So somebody must answer this question. If it's not us, who in South Africa right now is standing a better chance than us? Most other bidders.
We'll know next week.
Most other bidders are just armed with a PowerPoint presentation. We are armed with the real thing, or a going concern. So you must tell me, Feria, who is this PowerPoint presentation that is better than something that is real, something that is going, something that has got audience?
Fine.
Who's that PowerPoint?
Stephen, Nathan, last question to you. Is land expropriation without compensation, is it worrying you as a business person, as an investor?
Whenever there is uncertainty, then that's worrying for investors. So people don't like uncertainty. Obviously, in South Africa we have many challenges to overcome and problems to solve. And what would be helpful is if we had clarity of policy, of how were we going to tackle these challenges.